So yeah, part two. So I'm now hearing this, and she brought this candle up, and she just wanted a candle for, because some people call the Tor the heart chakra, and so and this is the center of the heart, this egg stone part, and where all the ley lines meet, there's apparently the two major lines, the Michael and Mary line, and then there are subsidiary lines, but they seem to merge around the Tor, as though it's like you would in your main ventricles and all your capillaries and various other veins and stuff like that with your heart, yeah. So there's this kind of uh, you know energy system that people believe is existing around the Tor, and so she was explaining this to me, and flabbergasted by this what these Americans had done, and it was just interesting, because they'd done this ceremony, and I wasn't really thinking about it at that point. But what happened was she left the candle, and it was there for the people who had died and so on, and I'd gone up top to do my usual ritual of catching the sun go down, and Matt appears, and he tells me, and then I'm like, shit, it's nuts. And then he said, do you want a mushroom? And there was these mushroom pills going around that were said to be 40 mushrooms in each pill. And they were beautiful. I really enjoyed them. They were very level and not at all like the fresh mushrooms that you get straight out of the ground, which can be quite woo. And so I took this mushroom pill, and then I went down to the side of the Tor, and I was sitting there and slowly coming up on the mushrooms, and it seemed as though at one point my sole purpose was to keep this candle alight. So I was going to spend the whole night keeping this candle, because there was kind of a breeze and a wind coming in, and it was constantly trying to put it out, and so it was like, that was my mission for the night, to keep this candle lit, on behalf of these poor families who lost their siblings or spouse, or family members or stuff. Like, there was a lot of people, like 2,000-3,000 people, and it was just like, oh my god. So now I'm in this trip, and suddenly there's this menacing cross on very Christian looking cross on the tree. People hung like the fairy trees, if these prayers, and it's the whole tree's covered with these kinds of prayers, and this menacing cross is there, and I hadn't seen it before, because I noticed everything on that tree, any new additions, because I spent a lot of time there. It was a place where I meditated, and so I'm in this trip now, and suddenly I'm kind of getting paranoid about the Americans, I'm like thinking to myself, God, wow, what if they opened up something, because this stuff all coming to my head via the people, who are constantly coming up doing energy work to close things down because somebody else has opened them up and released a dragon or this or that and the other, and trying to interpret these things, that people say, and take it with a pinch of salt at the same time, not giving it too much energy, not disbelieving, not believing, but some of these people I respect. I like them. I like them as people, and it's what they do, light workers and so on. So it was like, oh well, if this represents this heart chakra of the planet, what if these Americans had foolishly been mind controlled, if you like, into doing this ceremony, which didn't help the cause or help the situation, in which led to some portal opening up and this channel where this thing was allowed to happen, And I was suddenly, in myself, because my Christian mind thinks like this sometimes. I get this guilt coming in, this like it's all my fault, and partly, to do with the way I was brought up as well, and always taking things personally, and I'd been, becoming more aware of this, not quite getting to the full, I suppose, awareness of how to sort it out, how to deal with this, and so on. So I'm now in that kind of state of like, oh shit, I didn't do my job, I hadn't passed the night before, and they'd done this thing, and now you're on mushrooms, so the trip is becoming amplified, yeah. So I'm there, and I'm looking at this cross all the time, and it's really kind of bugging me, this thing, and so I pick it up, and I smash it down on the eggstone, and suddenly it was just like this, like woo woo woo, a reverberation of like a ripple, and suddenly like it just became clear, and I'm in like what's like a G20 conference or whatever it was back then, G7 or 8, G10, so going up all the time, um, and on one side this like this crowd, shouting for retaliation, war, and then on the other side there's this crowd, they're shouting for peace and calm and understanding and so on, and it's this battle, and so I'm there now, and I'm in this kind of story, and I'm just going, love, peace, and I'm on this side, and calling for calm, and I can feel, when you're on mushrooms, you really feel this whole kind of sound reverberating out into the the cosmos, and the planet, and it was a very powerful trip, and all the time I'm kind of I'm going through all this kind of mixed emotions about like what really happened, and how did this happen, why did this happen, like who would do such a thing, and not really having any facts or anything like that. And so I'm in this trip anyway, and I'm constantly like trying to keep this candle going, keep this flame lit, it was really important to keep this flame lit. And then suddenly this in my mind, it's like, I'm asking for answers to questions in relation to why why so many people, and then all the people that die in these situations in war and so on, and then I hear this cry, and it's such a wail and a pain, it's heart wrenching, and it's not human, but it's not quite animal. And you've got to understand, when you're on mushrooms, if you've never been on mushrooms, that like your senses are heightened, and sounds that would normally sound normal can sound abnormal, but or vice versa, suddenly like a plane that might be an annoying sound suddenly turns into like like almost a beautiful sound, like a musical sound. So you get that kind of thing. So I can't be sure of what it is. It could have been a badger. That was my intuition. But it wasn't. In my mind, it was like it was coming from the Tor. It was coming from the Crone. And there are rabbit holes or badger holes in there. I never could figure out if it was badgers or rabbits coming out of this particular one, because it was big enough for a badger. But my guess was it's rabbits. But so there's this cry coming out of this the crone, the old one. But it started first as a child, and then it became more like adult, and then it became old. And so this cycle, and it went round, and it could have gone on for 20 minutes, 40 minutes. It was definitely a long time. It seemed like what was a long time, and it was cyclical. Like it was like maiden, mother, crone, and I was flabbergasted by this, and it had this overpowering feeling of like everything's all right. Like this is just part of birth, life, death. It's the natural cycle of life, and it was all meant to be. And I'm in this kind of trip, and I'm kind of like I'm the stars are out now in full, and it was a beautiful night, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, what am I doing here? It's the first time. We're talking about like May, June, July, August, and now September. So we're in at least 4 months now, just a little over 4 months, and I'm starting to question what am I doing here? I'm like this. Someone had done some kind of little funny flyer thing that they put up around town. It was like Shano, which Sha in Irish means yes, in some circles, and no, and it was like, yes, no, on the hill, the fowl upon the hill, doing a workshop in the art of ball oaking, ball oaking, bollocking, yeah. And it was just a funny thing, A friend of mine was a little upset about it. I wasn't upset. I thought it was quite funny, but it was just somebody having a bit of a laugh at the paddy on the hill, really, And as I said before, I got called everything from a guru to a con man, And I had interesting challenges from the town in relation to what I was doing up there. But my job was more about the pilgrims. It was the people who came, from afar, and the interesting synchronicities and what I noticed about what the tour represented, what it was really about. Most people seem to come who were on the verge of making a life-changing decision, and I found that really interesting because the carrier pigeons, the ones with the notes, they used to stop off the tour to what's the word for it? Well, have a rest for starters, but I don't know. There's a word for it, but you know, they looked like they needed to stop there, and focus for a while, before they go on to the next part of the journey, and that's kind of what people were doing. So it was interesting energetically to observe this, and I'd observed it in many people, so it wasn't just like some kind of false fantasy or intuition, it felt very real. And because so many people, and a lot of people had never been, they didn't know what it was. They had no idea about Glastonbury. Glastonbury to most people is just a festival, and that's it. The fact is that it's traditionally known as the place of the first Christian church, and the abbey was a mighty source of it had a massive library there at one point. It was burned down to the ground by King Henry VIII, and it's got the sacred springs. It's got the chalice well, which is the stones in the chalice well are the same stones as Stonehenge. The blue stone. Which dates 3, 4, 5,000 years. So and there's the quest for the Holy Grail. There's the Kingfisher. King Arthur and Guinevere were said to be buried in the abbey, and there are a lot of mystery. Joseph Arimathea, who's supposed to have brought some of the relics from Christ. Who had been a tin merchant and who had definitely visited Cornwall. Some say Christ came to Glastonbury, and that's where he learned his healing skills, from the Druids, It's always been a place of a learning, a centre. But there's no doubt about it. It's got mystery, and when the the mist comes in, it's like you could see it as it once was, as I said before, in relation to it was tidal and it was surrounded by water, and so all the hills and all those kind of places like the actual Glastonbury Tor, they would have been islands. So magical places, and some say it was the place of the high priestess, while Anglesey in Wales was the place of the high priest, and they were schools of learning, and then they say Arthur came here for healing during the times of battle wounds and wounded in battle. And there's other interesting stories about the fair folk, who some people say were these tall beings who came from Atlantis, who were the Druids, and one of the first places they landed was Lyonesse, and came up into Avalon, and brought the apples from Avalon means Isle of Apples. So they say they brought the apples from Atlantis, with some of the things they collected on their boats before the entire island went down. But yeah, back to the story, in relation to what happened. And what happened was suddenly now I'm questioning the whole what am I doing here? It's I got so much power off the synchronicity of meeting Tim. In relation to, it was like he handed me this baton, and it all felt really good. It was like it was meant to be, in order to give me that that kind of that will to see it through, because I might have lasted the 3 weeks and say, right, I have enough of this, I'm off, but because of that one act and that one meeting, it empowered me something rotten. But this now was the first time I was questioning it, because so much magic had happened up to this point. I'd become very aware, but I hadn't quite noticed it until a few weeks after. But this is what happened. I'm going to have to come back and part 3.